right, everybody. I am excited for this talk today. Yet another one of my very favorite anatomical gangsters, Brent Brookbush. He is the owner and founder of the Brookbush Institute. And this is one of these guys like me. He is dedicated to building an educational platform that I really feel like everybody wished existed when I was younger. If I knew about Brent when I was in research and in studying and all the stuff with anatomy, I probably wouldn't have even finished my graduate degree. I'd have just learned from him. He's got a very student-centered kind of evidence-based practice, and his mission statement, which I love, is that the Brookbush Institute optimizes the delivery of human movement sciences and education by integrating technology, student-centered learning, and evidence-based practical education. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you guys all to my friend, Brent Brookbush. Hi, Brent.
Hello. I've never been called an anatomy gangster before. I kind of like that. That sounds way more hardcore than what I usually use, which is that hashtag anatomy geek. You see me use that. Like I'm like usually the nerdy guy, but I'll take
exactly.
I'll take anatomy gangster. That sounds badass.
It is. It's a little more badass because like the word geek kind of sounds like we're wearing, you know, like weird clothes and stuff, which we might. But
I definitely do.
Yeah, and so you know
when I'm wearing clothes, since we all work from home now.
Exactly. You know, and you're one of these people who for years and years and years, I mean, I think I've known you for almost 20 years in the industry, and you just continue to push the boundaries and the bar of understanding evidence-based practice in your in how you work with people. And I've even gotten to experience work. I remember one time coming to you, I can't even remember what was bugging me, but like in one session, I walked out of there going, oh, thank God for Brent, you know, like when you just know how to look at a person, really take some inventory, do some muscle testing, and then get them into the right place. And one of the things I've seen recently from you that I wanted you to talk a little bit about I see you all the time on Instagram, and you're always talking about the myths that are out there, and you're somebody who is really trying to break those boundaries of the assumptions of movement, and then really what biomechanics is for, and to also look at the body from not just biomechanical pieces, but then to bring it into a cohesive state. So I want you to share a little bit about your background and your business and how you kind of follow through to help educate people.
All right, maybe we can kind of back into that a little bit. You know, you mentioned the myth busting thing, and I think part of that comes into social media has become a platform where everybody gets a lot of information from. And unfortunately, because of that, we see a lot more negative information, right? Social media is great at spreading negative information. We actually have some studies that show that negative information spreads about 6 times faster than positive information on social media. So if we're going to use social media as a platform, we have to kind of realize that that negative thing is going to dominate, and we're going to have to push back. And as much as I wanted to stay out of that, we kind of realized that we were really cutting ourselves off at the knees from a business perspective, as well as an educational perspective, getting ourselves out there, if we didn't address some of these myths. You know, you spoke to the other piece of like being clear and concise and trying to cut through some of what I call the cobwebs, right? Where you have a lot of information up here, but it's like all kind of like this. That stuff kind of comes into one of my little nerdy pastimes or side things that I like to get into, which is like information theory and sorting. And a lot of people don't spend a lot of time thinking about categorization and labeling and how we sort things and how we put them into systems. And, you know, that's a little separate from the myth busting thing, because I don't want to think that when I talk about that stuff, or want people to think that when I talk about that stuff, I'm accusing anybody of being wrong. Really, that information technology piece or that information management piece is something none of us get enough of in school, right? Whether it's a certification or a doctorate. Like, we don't get enough of that. So it's really me trying to kind of help people go, like, if you got a little bit more organized with your thinking, let me help you through bringing in some of this sorting theory. You'd be surprised at how much you actually know, right? Like, you actually know more than you think you do. It's just so like this, it's hard for you to pull it all in a precise way. You know, as far as my background, you know, you have a little head start on me as far as years of experience. I think I was just getting started when you were already starting to like take off. The belt method has been going strong for a long time. So yeah, very, very impressive. But during that time, I obviously fell in love with the education thing. We're going back into like the late 90s, early 2000s. I fell in love with the education thing, and I kept going, thinking to myself that, like you said, man, there's a lot of stuff with this education environment in our industry that is really not great.
No, and you fill in a massive gap. I mean, even some of the stuff you're talking about, like that's the thing about Brent's work is that I think, both of us come from a very traditional collegiate world of having a master's in science, a lot of anatomy, a lot of physiology, biology, right? And you kind of live in a box. And then when you actually have to do real world application, I always remember there was this whole idea of like with NASM when I first got NASM certified, and they were like, oh, well, you either have an anteriorly tilted pelvis or a posterior, and it's this and that. And I'm like, the person walking into my clinic is not that easy. I wish that that's all it was just this one little minor detail, but then you add into it the slight rotations, the torsion. And I just think that a lot of practitioners, especially in the fitness industry, really don't know how to assess. They're not really sure, even though they see something, right? They see something, but is that really a problem? And I think that's the thing about you, is that you're a real truth teller of the body. You kind of seek out really the cause of what's going on, rather than looking at them and saying, oh, this shoulder is up. And I'm like, well, maybe the shoulder is down. You know what I mean? Like, is there a problem there? And I think that process that you're bringing people through is really very systematic and brings them sort of back down to a baseline to just understand first what they see before they start to apply anything, to really think through what they're seeing before providing an application. I think that's really one of the, really solid things about your whole business model and how you're teaching people, is that you're getting people to see before apply.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some interesting stuff in there. Like, I think people forget that, and I keep saying this over and over again. There was a book I was reading. I think it was something Titans by the same guy who wrote Tim Ferriss, same guy who wrote 4 Hour Workweek. And he has a question he keeps asking everybody in there: if you had one billboard that everybody would see, what would you write on it? And I said, life is probabilistic, not binary. That'd be the one thing I would write. Because I think part of what you're talking about with the different signs that we're talking about in assessments, and like even what you were talking about with the original NASM stuff that first came out in 1998, right? Is they were trying to pinpoint a few signs for people to hold on to. And that's great, but that still implies this binary thing of it is or it isn't. And in reality, everything is more or less likely, right? There's no solid yes or no's. What you're trying to do, though, is stack the probabilities in your favor. So, is this pain that somebody is seeing, or the dysfunction that somebody seeing, is it more likely to be corrected if we go after the Nebo's ensign? Or is it more likely to be corrected if we go after the anterior pelvic tilt? You see both of them, right? Like you said, most people come in, they have multiple signs on the overhead squat assessment, if that's the assessment we're going to pick apart, right? Most people have a lot of things. So what do you go after first, right? And then when you talk about those probabilities, then sometimes we can start laying out some algorithms or some filters, right? Which for us would be like, you always go after right to left asymmetries first, and then you go after the worst dysfunction, or the dysfunction most likely to be contributing to the person's pain or complaint, and then you'd go from like bottom up, right? So we work through that algorithm to help you get to the sign that is most probably going to fix what you are about to address. Now, does that mean you'll get it right 100% of the time? No. But then you go to the next most probable sign. And if you keep working that way, your reliability overall is going to go up, right? Which is going to make your outcomes overall look much, much better. And you're going to feel that as a practitioner. You're going to feel like you're doing a good job.
Well, it is. And I always feel like
I know it sucks, but it's all bad.
It's true though, because like to me, I always, when people say she's a healer, I say, I don't heal anything. What I am is I'm a really great investigator. I ask a lot of questions, and I just, how you're saying is, you deduce what you're seeing, and you're not like, to me, it drives me crazy when people speak in absolutes. It's like, it's this thing that's wrong, and I'm like, so what happens as a practitioner? And I have a lot of clients who walk into my office who say, oh, well, this, my PT says this. And you don't want to sit there and say, well, your PT is wrong. Like, that's actually, not the problem. You actually have a lot of emotional trauma that nobody's talking about. And the way your brain is perceiving your movements is the problem. It's not your quadricep, it's like, that's just a piece of the puzzle. So I think a lot of times with, especially in the fitness realm, a lot of times people are giving their clients way too much information, and they start to store this as being, this is my problem, and this person has said that they've identified it. But if you can't fix it, now you're actually causing more dysfunction in the participant, because now it's like, well, you can't fix me. I must really be broken,
Sure.
And what am I going to do? And you can actually cause more issues in the body, more fear in the body, more uncertainty in the body. And I think that is a big problem in our industry, is that we don't have enough study, enough practice to really get very good at, just like what you're saying, be systematic. Like, it looks like this is probably the most probable problem. Let me go ahead and focus on that. And then if that doesn't work, I'm going to go to B. And if I do B and A gets better, well, then I know that this is probably more the cause. Okay, I got it. So there you are. And so you, over time, start to, I think, become better at it as a clinician, because you're trying the most probable and then working yourself through the system. And that was always how I was taught also, is like, what are you seeing? Don't say that's what it is. It's like, kind of like it's a guess, right? We're making an inquiry. We're seeing if it sticks, and if it doesn't, try the next piece. And I really love, the one thing I really admire about the practice that you do and the education that you put out, is it's so 360. It is so well-rounded. And the process in your, like with the app that you have, I want you to talk a little bit about that, because you're giving, to me, world-class education to people in the industry who, just know that if you do this, that's a bicep exercise. It's like, oh my God, are we back in fourth grade in the understanding of movement? And here you've got such a clinical mindset, but you're breaking it down piece by piece, from anatomy to biomechanics to then application, also assessments, and being able to go through this process. And the app is just so fantastic. And also, for the price of it, it's like the price of admission is like practically free in my mind. I mean, I think of how much money I spent on my master's, and I was like, again, if I knew you, I'd have not gone through my master's. I'd have just studied with you and gotten over it, and I probably would have finished sooner, right? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, you bring up so many interesting topics. I think going back to your first part of your conversation there, is you were talking about like going through the different steps, right? And like, this is the most probable, this is the next most probable. And you talked a little bit about like, a good clinician will start here, and then if that doesn't work, go here. Well, this is an advantage to thinking probabilistically, because if you think binary, if you think this didn't work, your immediate assumption is, let's say we were using the Brookbush Institute stuff for an example. You say, okay, Brent said this is how you fix knee valgus. This didn't work. Brent sucks, right? That's the binary absolute thinking. But when you start thinking about probabilistics, well, probabilities, right? And you apply that to your practice, what you start to realize is you go, okay, here's my list of most likely culprits. Here's my list of interventions that address those, which creates options.
Yes, because there's always one way to fix it, right? There's always more than one way. And I mean, that's what I'm talking about, is that's where you, I think, stand apart from everybody, is that you're giving people multifaceted options to resolve one problem that you see.
And to bring it back to more of your I feel like the environment you create, right? Like I tend to be very sciencey, but I'm going to go a little not sciencey. With what I just said, it creates a much more positive and inclusive way of treating, right?
Yes.
Like it's not so like contrarian and harsh and obstructive, and we're going to fight our way through this. It's very much like, here's the problem, here's some potential solutions, we're going to innovate our way out of this, right? And we get to bring all this other stuff in. You know, I hope, and we talk about this in our workshops a little bit, and a little bit on the website, is even if you had other techniques that we didn't teach, that you wanted to bring in to what we are teaching, what we would have shown you is a systematic approach for integrating it into your intervention plan and a way of testing it to see if it was more effective than what you had been doing before. Right? So like this is the power of having, again, you know, a probabilistic approach to a systematic approach to both assessment and intervention. Right. And then you get, of course, that's all the academic side of building the content out. You were talking about the app. Well, the app is just a way of making all this stuff available. You know, I think a lot of people, especially coming from our generation, a lot of companies built apps because it was a money grab.
Yeah.
And they totally forgot what a mobile app really was about, which was enhancing access, enhancing convenience. Right. So when we look at our mobile app, which has lagged a little bit from our website, honestly, what you come to find out real quick is that having an app is like having a second website. It's a whole other thing you have to manage. And apps are much more difficult for content because you're dealing with a very small screen. That sounds like a very stupid, simple little thing, but it really creates some massive challenges.
Well, especially when you're talking about human movement and trying to resolve pain. I mean, it's an incredibly, incredibly important thing that your students can really take the information in and immediately apply it. And if you're not giving it to them in a way where they can really visually understand what you're talking about, you kind of are behind the eight ball already. And it's like you're giving them information they can't use, which I think is like a lot of programs.
If you can't get into that app and look at it and it's easy and to engage with and like you can read from it, it's tough. And I think what we finally realized this year is, and what you'll see before the end of the year for our company, is we're going to be app first. We're just going to start developing everything on the app because we know if it fits on the app, it'll fit on the website fine.
Exactly.
The opposite isn't true.
Exactly.
So we've been much more app centric all year. We finally got the Audible stuff up on the app. Not that we're part of Audible, but we have voiceovers that are like Audible. Everybody just kind of knows them as Audible. So we have the voiceover stuff on the app, and I think we're going to integrate these new text boxes that allow you to open up pieces of content at a time, which will help with the readability of the text-based stuff. So, you know, for us though, to give you an idea, when I'm building this education platform, she just walked out on me.
Sorry.
I guess she doesn't like
that. My door. It was loud out there. Keep going.
Oh, it's cool. So it's like,
edit. We'll edit on this one. Don't worry. Start this. And take two.
Right. So, you know, with the mobile app, it really comes down to what I'm thinking about when I'm building this education platform. As far as I'm concerned, education should be so accessible, so convenient, so easy to get to the learning part, so obstacle free, that Sue, in the middle of an 8-patient day, gets a cancellation, grabs her lunch, which she probably brought with her, as most practitioners do, because to leave the clinic isn't happening, right? Grabs her lunch, heats it up in the microwave, pulls up a course, and knocks out another credit. If I can't get to that point, if I can't get to the point that you can do the majority of your learning on the subway on the way to and home to and from work, right? If you happen to live in New York, if I can't get it to the point that you can literally on lunch breaks and maybe in an hour and two on the weekends, you can't get this done, we have not done enough. And until educators start thinking that way, as far as I'm concerned, they're part of the problem.
There There it is. There it is. That's mind blowing, because that's it. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things, that the way that you've actually even organized the app, and how you've got somebody going through a single, what do we call it, a protocol, that you can actually just watch this one video. It's not an extensive, it's not hours long. Take that information in and then turn right back around and utilize it, which is, I think, so critical now. And what I would just say to everybody is, there's no excuse not to learn more and not to stay in that box, but to really expand your knowledge and start to challenge the education that you have, and realize that we know what we know, but we have to realize that we don't know what we don't know. And when you start realizing how much you don't know, there's a lot more to learn. And again, if you start learning from the educators that are really giving you valuable content, that's, again, easy to digest in small sound bites, you can turn right around and put it into application quickly. I think this is super, super important for, I think, our industry right now, especially after COVID, because so many people are so isolated that the very best way to learn, in my mind, is online, because it's either learn online or don't learn. And I don't think that's an option.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so much. Every time you speak, I'm like, there's so much packed into what you just said. Yeah, like our courses are only 1 to 4 credits, 1 to 4 hours long. We did that on purpose. I mean, we would have liked to have made them shorter, but unfortunately, all of our courses are also accredited for CECs, and most accreditations don't have a unit smaller than 1, right? Which is 1 contact hour. So all of our courses are 1 to 4 hours long, which allows you to get credit as you go. We've also done away with the end summative exam, right? The end one shot on goal. You have to pass this huge thing. All that promotes, and research has bared this out, all that promotes is cram and forget. Right? This is another big problem with education. It's a huge problem with the NCCA accreditation, which should be jettisoned from the industry, right? They try to force everybody into this horrifically bureaucratic end exam development process that has absolutely no research to demonstrate that it is a more valid way of educating individuals.
Agreed.
What is probably way more valid is what we do and what education in other industries, so you don't think it's just us, other industries have already moved in this direction, is the idea of little quizzes as you go.
Yeah.
All of our quizzes are like 7 to 10 questions long. You have a couple bigger courses that get up to like 15 and 20 questions, right? But like, those are the biggest exams we have. Most of them are like 10 questions. You take one and you get credit. You're done. That is the credit for that course. You don't have to like keep coming back and cramming. You can come back and do things at your own pace. And that's another one of those super important things. And then you were talking about like challenging your education and trying to understand what you don't know. I mean, the other big thing we need to get away from is like the guru worship.
Exactly.
Right? Like when people come to the Brookbush Institute, they're not getting my opinion. Right? Like I try to keep my opinion out of things. It's more of, here's the most reasonably objective conclusion we could come to based on all relevant research, original research in this area. And then we carefully put it through a filter of, okay, how do we make this practically relevant? I would say that's the only place where our bias could interject. Maybe there's a risk for error there. But, you know, at the very least, we kind of need to do that, because otherwise, if you just look at straight research and you don't have that last filter, it can get a little heady and start looking like it just doesn't matter to anything that actually happens on the floor. And it does. It just takes a little bit of experience to know how to apply that. But I would say that that's the service we offer, is we're doing that step of like, we'll go through all the research for you. We'll write it all out for you. Right. We'll do a hefty review if you really like the research. We'll even leave the bibliography so that you can go in and do it yourself. But then here's what we're going to do. We're going to summarize it for you at the top of the course. And then chances are, on top of that, we're just going to give you the one pager at the top that gives you the exact practical application of all of this, so that if you want to trust our conclusions, right, which you know are built on our systematic processes, but if you want to trust our conclusions and just go to the practical stuff, you can read the one pager at the top, go straight to the practical application videos and go, all right, I got this. You might have to do a little more study than that to pass the exams,
but that's it. To me, studying and passing an exam is one thing. It's when you actually can take information in and quickly bring it into real world application. And for me, I always think, the human body is so incredibly complex, and most of the models that we're using are incomplete anatomical models. And a living human body is not an anatomical model, it's a living human body. And so there's adaptability. You have to really understand how to speak to your clients, how to listen, how to have great listening skills. And then again, give people enough of the application without regurgitating the science, because I think that's where people get that flaw in our industry. They end up learning things and then they want to turn right around and try to explain like psoas or what rectus femoris is. And it's like you're actually stressing your clients out trying to explain stuff to them, when really all you need to do is apply a technique and bring them home with homework. Just do this thing and then come back and let's see if you're better. And if you are, we're on the right track. And that's really what you're doing, is laying down some breadcrumbs for somebody to sit there and follow the trail and see if you get them to the place that they want to go, right? I mean, that's really the important component, I think, of education, is being able to apply it. And the way that you've delivered the education is solid enough, like you go into school, but practical application enough that sort of gives you that more holistic way of approaching your clients. And then also, I think, gives people enough freedom as teachers, as a trainer, to decide which protocol to use. Like, you're not saying, if this is wrong, if this is what you see, this is your protocol. What you're saying is, if this is what you see, there's at least 4 ways to skin that cat, to work on that. And then if this one doesn't work, go through this process first before you go to the next sub level. Make sure that you are really, I think, doing it.
Ideally, you take those 4 choices and you refine them via assessment.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's the big piece. One thing I've told some clinicians who I think get that problem of like needing to relay a lot of technical information to their clients. It's your job to know the equation. All your client needs is the answer.
Brilliant. Well said.
So like it could be, we could be looking at, if anybody remembers the quadratic formula, right? And like the first time you see that, you're like, holy shit. But like the answer was like 4, right? That's kind of the difference between being a professional and your client walking in the door. They don't need to know the quadratic formula. They need to know 4. You just need to give them the answer. And then you can add what we're doing, which is, how did we come up with this formula? Mm-hmm. Right? You don't even necessarily need to memorize that, right? Is what we're saying. We're going to give you the quadratic formula so you can get to the answer yourself. But we want you to know that we are giving you the right formula. And the only way to do that is to put all of this modeling and evidence and information theory into the systematic process that gets there.
I love it. So well said. It seems so simple. It's so simple. That's what I'm talking about.
I wish it was simple. It sounds simple when I say it, then I'm like, I've spent the last 15 years doing this in front of my computer screen. So it's not that simple. It's like, no wonder I have like receding hairline here.
But you've done the work, Brent. I think that's it, is you've done the work to deliver it to people who are coming up in the industry so that they have some quality education. And that's really, again, I just so appreciate when people have really exceptional education that's so well-versed and it's so clearly thought out. I just think that anybody who is in the field of fitness, if what you want to do is work with a living human body and understand biomechanics and really learn about what you're seeing in a body, I think that this is the way to go, is to go check out Brent. So Brent, how can people find out about you and learn more about your program and how to get on board to learning from Brent?
Google us. So brookbushinstitute.com. We're kind of like built like a Netflix, right, for human movement science. I really do love Netflix. I actually was really late to that party and discovered Netflix this year during COVID. So. But as a communication medium, like they're really amazing, their delivery of content. So if you thought about the Brookbush Institute as delivering you human movement science courses like a Netflix, which by the way, were about the same price. So, that we hope that changes the model and increases access and affordability. I mean, as this company has grown, I've definitely realized that my social issue that I'm trying to face down is hopefully we can grow to a point that we don't only cause this to be an example in our industry of where things should be, reducing the price to this $19.99 a month model, which, as you know, is 1/20th to 1/50th the upfront cost for a certification. If we were to compare ourselves to certifications, and it's like if we can get this as a master's degree program, which we're working on, we're talking about, hundreds of a cost. Like, it would be pretty ridiculous. I think that's an important step that we need to take, and hopefully we can move beyond this industry and actually show some other industries like, hey, you can be a financially viable company, right? A very successful financially viable company doing this model that doesn't destroy or tax the student for wanting good quality education.
Well said, well said. And I think that that's important now. I mean, again, when there's a deterrent to education is financial, I just think what a burden that is, because you just never get ahead because you don't have the finances. But how can you make more money unless you have more knowledge and you can help more people, right? So it's kind of this conundrum.
It's the new caste system. Like, there's no doubt about it. Beautiful. And, I did not have it easy. Like, I put myself through school. I think me and you met when I was doing 2 jobs. Like, I was trying to build something that was like pre-Brookbush Institute, plus doing the training and teaching, plus I was going to school full time. I did that for like 12 years, and it definitely left scars. Like, there's no doubt. Like, I have like some serious issues.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, it's a hard thing. I mean, I did the same thing. When you're going to school and you're trying to pay your bills and you want to be an educator and you want to be a leader in the industry and you want to do good in the world, it's again, I mean, I think what you're doing is really fantastic, because you're taking a lot of guesswork out for people. You're giving them
I'm trying to make sure people don't have to do what I did.
Exactly.
I think it's very unfortunate that you basically have 2 options to get ahead. It's either have rich parents or give up 15 years of your life.
Exactly.
It's one thing if you choose to give up 15 years of your life. Like, I was just reading a book on another one of my business books, and they talk about, like, you want a successful company? Lock yourself in your room for 10 years. Because that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take. It's one thing if you choose that. I think it's very unfortunate when we get to a point in society where, because of the cost of education, we're forcing that just to get to middle class living. That is not okay. So if I can make that whole thing cheap, you can hold down a job because the flexibility and convenience of online education, all right, maybe combined with a little live education where absolutely necessary, that we have to move in that direction. Like, this, I don't see a way around that. And like I said, if you're not moving in that direction, as far as I'm concerned, this is where I will get a little contrarian. This is where my fists go up. This is where I start gritting my teeth, is organizations that are trying to, like the NCCA, trying to put that end exam with massive amounts of bureaucracy and going to a laser grade center, increasing the cost for students by many, many fold. You're part of the problem.
Well said.
Universities charging $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 per year for a degree. I'm sorry, you're part of the problem. Like,
I love it. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Guys, if you're hearing this, I mean, honestly, if you want some solid education, you're saying, hey, this last year has just created a financial burden. Again, you can't, you're going to get quality education at a really great cost, and you're going to be in a network of like-minded individuals, which is also so fantastic. Again, we're community-oriented people.
And we need to do a better job of that. That's something that you do so well that I hope we can start bringing in towards the end of the year, just thinking about all of our projects that we got on board. But we need to even do a better job of, like, bringing our community together, because I'm sure you've had the experience. The international community is amazing.
Amazing.
Like, people find your stuff and you're like,
oh yeah,
wait, Where are you writing me from?
The United States, again, I think we get a little lazy, greedy, and stupid, right? Like we kind of want everything to come to us. We feel like we know enough, and really we're not out there seeking enough. And I think that's the thing about the European community, is that they're hungry to learn more from the educators that they see as being high quality. It's true.
Not just Europe. Like
yes, exactly. Asia.
We're working on some partnership with a company that's in all of the Arabic speaking countries.
Amazing.
And I was like, okay, let's do that. And then it's like South Africa, and then we'll get something from, Hong Kong, and then we'll get something from Australia, and then something from Japan, and like Iran and Israel, and like, of course, all of the European nations too. And then South America, Colombia and Brazil. And all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, I am literally all over the world. There are people like us trying to help other people with movement all over the world.
All over the world. And that's it. Again, you're a thread. That's why we call you an anatomical gangster. That's what it is. That's what we're talking about. You got a touch point.
Worldwide gangster.
I love it. Well, listen, Brent, really so appreciate the time. And I hope that all of you guys who are listening today go out there and try to find Brent. And I'll make sure to have all of the information about him in the notes as well. Brent, thank you again so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing you next time I am back in New York City.
Oh, you better.
I'll see you soon. So guys, I'll see you all on the next talk. And again, stay happy, stay healthy, make sure that you're sipping water, eat water-filled foods, try to bring a little positivity into the world. Why don't you go out there and just reach out to people, tell them that you love them, and you'll just put some positivity in the world that comes back to everybody. Until I see you again, happy melting.